Wagwan. Good morning, good night, welcome back, and if you're listening for the first time, welcome to episode 12 of The Real Situation, where we give you a taste of Jamaican politics, focusing in this series on Jamaica's journey to becoming a republic. I'm your host, Melanie Byfield, and yes, my friend, we're there street again. Is the Porsche moving? Looks more like it's being pushed because the engine isn't roaring. Can move still. But one problem though. Looks like we're heading down a dead-end street. Why? To pass this bill needs a 2/3 majority in both houses. And the PNP already said from a long time they're standing firm, not moving forward if it means keeping the Privy Council as Jamaica's final court of appeal. Why? Because they feel the country won't be fully decolonised. Remember? What's the government's position on a final court of appeal? Well, I don't know. Well, more accurately, I don't recall that they've provided one, right? Section 49(6)(b) states that if 2/3 majority is not achieved in both houses, the bill can pass with 2/3 of the electorate voting yes for the bill in a referendum. Bear this in mind. No political party has ever won 2/3 of the vote of the electorate, plus an inadequate public education campaign equals, I wouldn't hold my breath trying to make history with that detour. So why is the Porsche moving? During a sitting of the House of Representatives on September 24th, Marlene Malahoo Fort provided an update of movements regarding constitutional reform to the House. Her last update was provided on June 11 of this year. So, what was the update? Parliamentary Council were given approval by the Cabinet to prepare legislation to establish the Republic of Jamaica and other matters. Approval was given for the legislative to revoke the Jamaica Order in Council of 1962 and save the second schedule of the Constitution of Jamaica to effect its patriation, in other words, to transfer its control. To abolish the British monarchy as head of state and replace it with the office of the President, to retain the parliamentary cabinet system, to amend the Jamaica Independence Act, to amend other associated legislation, and to amend other related deeply entrenched provisions for which you need a referendum to amend. So that was what Parliamentary Council was given approval by the Cabinet. They were also given approval to prescribe the procedure to obtain the approval of electors qualified to vote for election of members to the House of Representatives. So basically, they're going to determine what the referendum's going to look like when those who are eligible exercise their vote. In accordance with the Cabinet's approval, drafted instructions were issued on June 24, 2024, and on July 22, 2024, 2 draft bills were dispatched to the Ministry. And so Bill number 1 is called the Constitution Amendment Republic of Jamaica Bill 2024. What does this bill do? It's entitled an act to repeal the Jamaica Constitution Order in Council 62. And what does it do? It provides for the recognition of the Constitution of Jamaica as an act of Parliament and the people of Jamaica. Right? It provides for the recognition of the Constitution of Jamaica as an act of Parliament and the people of Jamaica. It amends the Constitution of Jamaica to provide for a non-monarchical head of state. In other words, it establishes Jamaica as a republic. and it makes amendments in respect, it makes other amendments in respect of the Constitution of Jamaica and to provide for connected matters. Miss Malahoo Fort goes on to then describe Bill number 2, and this is the Referendum Bill of 2024. It's an act to provide for the votes of electors to be taken with respect to any amendment of the Constitution of Jamaica required to be submitted to electors pursuant to Section 43, subsection 3. In other words, this is the referendum. She talked about a reminder of the broad goals that were to be achieved in Phase 1. So the Constitution is being taken out of its current form as a schedule to an imperial instrument, the Order in Council, and to have it as an act of Parliament and the people of Jamaica. She goes on to say also that within these broad goals, the statute law commissioners are empowered to publish the Constitution of Jamaica, read and construed as one, with the amendments as an act comprising Volume 1 of the Laws of Jamaica, that is the Jamaicanization of the Constitution. That will be really good, having it all in one place, as one document. Another goal includes the insertion of a preamble, the insertion of national emblems and symbols, adoption and provisions of the Jamaica Interpretation Act as relevant and appropriate to replace the UK Interpretation Act of 1889 to interpret the Constitution of Jamaica. The words of enactment have already been modernised with the amendment of Section 61 of the Constitution, which is now law. Minister Malahoo Fort stated that she is unaware of any partisan dispute about taking steps to achieve this goal. She goes on to say that the CRC are discussing how the reformed constitution will be presented. They're going to be guided by a draftsman. An expert committee has been assembled to recommend a preamble for inclusion in the reformed constitution. There are 8 that are being considered in total, 5 of which are from the 1995 report of the Joint Select Committee, and an additional 3 were received from stakeholders this go around, but they weren't able to arrive at a consensus, so the expert committee will consider the matter. That committee was established on July 26, 2024, and they've had 3 meetings so far. And a draft is expected in the coming days. So that was goal number 1, right? Goal number 2 is the abolition of monarchical form of government. And again, she says there's no dispute of which she is aware on pursuit of that goal. A decision was made by the Cabinet to retain the parliamentary cabinet system and not to move to an executive presidential system. The British monarch is going to be replaced with a non-executive president as the formal head of state of Jamaica. Ms. Malahoo Fort goes on to say that experiences worldwide have demonstrated that executive presidential systems often result in corruption and dictatorial and unfair governments. Even in countries with long histories of democracies, there's been evidence of instability, unjust and corrupt governments. Comparative assessment, when making a comparative assessment, countries with a parliamentary cabinet system have been well and better positioned to preserve human rights and achieve democratic stability and economic welfare compared with those of an executive presidential system. She goes on to say that it is incorrect to regard the parliamentary system as one that's purely handed down by the British, and that many were not a part of the British Commonwealth that have adopted this system. She goes on to say that research shows that presidential systems tend to lapse into dictators. Executive presidents tend to lapse into dictators. Yeah, as I said, those are the words of Marlene Malahoo Fort, as stated in her presentation. But in the coming weeks, we're going to reason about parliamentary systems and other types of systems of governance that could have been brought into the mix where Jamaica is concerned. Ms. Malahoo Fort goes on to say that a recommendation of the CRC regarding the appointment of a president has been the subject of numerous comments and criticisms, including former Prime Minister Patterson, former Prime Minister Golding, and a Gleaner editorial. And as you might recall, PJ lit a fire, right? And I quote his response to the method of appointment of a president. I quote, "It fills him with great alarm, is absolutely unacceptable, must be vehemently resisted, and would totally destroy the purpose, intent, and legitimacy of a head of state." PJ that. Ms. Malahoo Fort goes on to say, presentations were made to the CRC at a meeting on September 18 by Jamaicans for Justice and Jamaica Coalition for a Healthy Society, and they added their voice to that feedback. She goes on to say that the committee is carefully reconsidering the matter and has asked Dr. Lloyd Barnett to formulate a revised recommendation for consideration and submission. They are also revising the method to remove the president from office in direct response to comments from Mark Golding, leader of the opposition. Since tabling the report, Ms. Malahoo Fort goes on to say that the CRC met on June 7, June 26, July 10, July 24, July 31, August 28 and September 18. Minutes for all of those dates are available on the Road to Republic website, except for the August and the September date. Me say that. She never said that. But what she does go on to say is the Drafting Strategy Subcommittee met twice, once on July 26 and one on August 28, to review the Constitution Amendment Republic of Jamaica Bill. This subcommittee is jointly chaired by Marlene Malahoo Fort and Dr. Lloyd Barnett. They are scheduled to meet, or were scheduled to meet, September 25. After the review, after the bill is reviewed, it will go to the Legislation Committee of the Cabinet, and then to the Cabinet for approval for tabling in the House. A joint select committee will be established to review the bill and report to the House, and then the process to debate and pass the bill will be as set out in Section 49 of the Constitution. Ms. Malahoo Fort goes on to say, now touching on the public education, that education of the people, and I quote, is there is a risk of the knowledgeable gap is being managed carefully. Be interested to know what you think about that particular statement, but yeah. Don't forget, you can email me, right, with any comments, atasteofja@outlook.com. And with regards to continuing to talk about update on public education, Ms. Malahoud-Fort says that the Legal Education and Corporate Communications divisions of the ministry have executed numerous engagement activities within and across the wider society, across the government and wider society, and the Ministry of National Security. They've also engaged the Jamaica Pentecostal Church, online webinars, Roman Catholic Church group, the JDF. They've held town hall meetings across the counties. They've engaged the Jamaica umbrella groups of churches, UTEC, Micro and Shortwood Teachers College, Portmore Community College, Excelsior Community College, National Senior Citizens Corp, St. Michael's College and Seminary, the JTA, and the CMU. And they're scheduled, there are scheduled engagements to come. There's a round of initiatives starting September 27 through April 3, 2025. Now, to be honest, I don't know what happened on what date. It was a bunch of stuff that was read out. It wasn't very clear what's happened or what's scheduled to happen. I do know one thing, though. There was a visit to Portmore Community College on September 19. That was on the Road to Republic website, and they attended there, and it said in their statement that they were there to share awareness of the recommendations of the CRC with those students. So, in the last episode, we were talking about the president, right? The proposed Jamaican head of state who would replace the present monarch, King Charles III. So now we're going to continue taking a look at what else the CRC report is proposing where the president is concerned. Section 4.4 is required qualifications. So it says here that the CRC, having considered the qualifications which should be prescribed for the holder of the office of the president, recommends that the president must 1. Be a Jamaican citizen by birth or descent. 2. Be ordinarily resident in Jamaica and be permanently in Jamaica for at least 10 of the last 15 years before the nomination. And 3, not be under a duty of allegiance to a foreign state or foreign power by his or her own act, and not another person's act. And 4, not be disqualified for election to the Parliament. So, you can't be a dual citizen, right? Even if I know you do it, right? If your parents took out citizenship when you were a little bit, you have a leg of that, right? So, for example, Edward Seaga was born in America. Mark Golding, while he was born in Jamaica, his father was British born, and he took out citizenship for him as a child. But by this provision, and it's not unusual, right? By this provision, those citizenships would have to be revoked in order to become president. Let me give you an example. When I say it's not unusual, the qualifications clause of Article 2, Section 1, Clause 5 of the United States Constitution requires the president to be a natural-born citizen of at least 35 years of age and a resident of the United States for the last 14 years, right? One thing I notice it doesn't mention, though, in these proposals for the president of Jamaica is an age requirement. And I'd be interested to know what your thoughts are on that, whether there should be a minimum age for a president or a prime minister, for that matter. So we just said that the US president has to be 35 years old, right? As a side note, for a member of the Senate, you actually have to be 30. And you must have been a citizen for 9 years. And the House of Representatives, you must be 25 and have been a citizen for 7 years. just as a side note. So US presidents, the younger ages of presidents, Bill Clinton was 46, Barack Obama was 47, Teddy Roosevelt was 42, JFK was 43, everybody else was in their 50s, 60s, 70s. Even if we look at United Kingdom prime ministers, right? Harold Wilson was 48. William Cavendish, he was prime minister in 1756 at the age of 36. Augustus Fitzroy, 3rd Duke of Grafton, in 1768 he became prime minister at the age of 33. Charles Watson Wentworth, the 2nd Marquis of Rockingham, in 1765 he became prime minister at the age of 33, and Lord Frederick North became prime minister in 1770 at the age of 37. William Pitt the younger, because there was an older, became prime minister at the age of 24 in 1783. Little tiny bit about him. The Conservatives embraced him as a patriotic hero. One of his accomplishments was the rehabilitation of the nation's finances after the American War of Independence. Pitt made changes to the tax system in order to improve its capture of revenue, which helped manage the mounting national debt. What else was the younger Pitt known for? Well, in the late 1700s, he attempted to strike a blow at France after the Haitian Revolution by adding Haiti to the British Empire. That is, he tried to re-enslave Haiti. But between yellow fever and the ferocious resistance from the Haitian people, who obviously had no intentions of being re-enslaved, Pitt ended up being responsible for the deaths of over 100,000 British soldiers and costing the government £4 million, which is about £500 million now, all for nothing because his attempt failed. All right, that was some 1700s business disarray, but let's look at the ages of some more recent prime ministers, right? John Major was 47. Tony Blair was 43. At the ages of becoming prime minister now, I mean. David Cameron was 43. Liz Truss was 47. Rishi Sunak was 42. And everybody else was in their 50s, 60s and 70s. Now, Jamaican prime ministers, Andrew Holness was the youngest at 39 when he became prime minister the first time in 2011. Everybody else became prime minister in their 40s, 50s or 60s. So then, technically, what does Jamaica say about the qualifying age for a president? Is it Section 39, which says that 21 years and up for an elected representative? Should it be at least 35 or 40 for the president of Jamaica, the highest office of the nation? I mean, we've had some really very well-rounded men in this position of Governor General, I mean, right? Right? Not true? Highly educated, impeccable reputation, and upstanding members of the nation, right? There's also a long history of appointing former educators to the position, with Governor Generals like Campbell, Glasspool, Cook, and Hall. They all had backgrounds as educators, but none of the Governor Generals have been under the age of 50. 1961, there was Kenneth Blackburn, he was 55. 1962, Sir Clifford Campbell, he was 70. 1973, Sir Hubert Doufus was 65. 1973 also, Sir Hubert Doufus was Governor General for a little bit. So 1973 as well was Sir Florizel Glasspool, he was 64. 1991, Edward Zacker was acting Governor General and he was age 60. Sir Howard Cook, 1991, he was 76. 2006, Sir Kenneth Hall, he was 65. And then the current Governor General, Sir Patrick Allen, became Governor General at the age of 58. The report does get a little more specific, actually, with regards to citizenship by descent. And what they've basically said is that there is no limit to the degree of descent in the Constitution at the moment where being a citizen by descent is concerned. So that could span a generation of 20 to 30 years, basically. So in section 4.4.3, and I quote, the CRC recommends that the criterion of citizenship by descent should be limited to 3 generations. In this case, the nominee would be considered the 3rd generation, the parent of the nominee the 2nd generation, and the grandparent of the nominee the 1st generation. And they're saying this on the basis that they feel it is of vital importance that a nominee to this office establish a stricter connection to Jamaica. Section 6.3.2 of the CRC's report recommends that there should be no inclusion of an impeachment process in the reformed constitution. If you recall, Bruce Goldin respectfully disagreed with that provision, and in fact, he viewed it with dismay. During his reasoning, Mr. Goldin asked, if it's good enough for our judges and good enough for our Auditor General and good enough for our Director of Public Prosecutions, why is it not good enough for certain other public officials? He actually went on to confirm that impeachment had been agreed back in 1995. It was part of the JLP manifesto in 2007 and 2011. And actually, Bruce Goldin drafted a bill in 2011. Mark Goldin took that bill and revamped it and tabled it in Parliament. It was called the Constitution Amendment Impeachment Act 2021. It was tabled in April 2021. And he actually went on to say that you can have a public official who conducts himself or herself in a particular way, but it's not a crime. But you certainly don't want that person continuing in public office. You hear that? You can have a public official who misconducts himself or herself in a particular way, but it's not a crime. But you certainly don't want that person continuing in public office. This president is someone who the CRC says is desired to be above partisan politics, a neutral arbiter, the embodiment of national unity and identity. At the end of her presentation, Ms. Malahoo Fort was asked about the inclusion of an impeachment provision. And she advised that the deliberations are continuing. People, we know where we're going. And it certainly ain't down no one-way street. We're looking forward to a ramped up, meaningful and effective public education campaign in the coming months, as well as consensus being reached on those really serious outstanding issues, as well as an apex court that represents the fully decolonised Jamaica, land we love, that we not only pledge to our ancestors, but to the generations to come. I hope you are enjoying this journey, finding it educational and useful, and looking forward to our continued travels on the road to becoming a republic, truly independent and sovereign together. You can find this podcast on YouTube, Buzzsprout, Spotify, Podcast Index, Deezer, Podcast Addict, Apple, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. Again, if you want to reason about anything, you can email me on atasteofja@outlook.com. And until the next time, thank you for supporting this podcast. I'm asking you, that you share it with your friends and your family. And again, I really appreciate you taking the time out to listen. One love.